Hey everyone, A Thorn for Your Heart here, giving you another tutorial. Today we are going to go ahead and work on an outfit. We are going to grab an outfit, one that I grabbed from Game of Thrones Winter is Coming. And I extracted some models from there just to use as this for this tutorial to test it out. And what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and put that model in Blender. We are going to rig that model, and then we are going to export that model out as an MDB for use in Neverwinter Nights 2. Now, a quick disclaimer beforehand. The model that I'm using is obviously the rights of Game of Thrones Winter's Coming. This tutorial is merely just an example of how to use the tools and the processes. I claim no rights to this model, or I claim no rights to any models used at all in any of my tutorials. It's more of a teaching lesson, so if there's an issue with that, just go ahead and let me know and I can take the video down. It's just more of a teaching tool for those who want to learn how to do quick modding for Neverwinter Nights 2. It just learn the tools pretty much. With that being said, I also wanted to jump on one more topic. As I'm teaching these tutorials, and I'm hoping people are learning a thing or two, understandably, it's just a method I use. I do have a background in Photoshop and some 2.5D, some After Effects, some 3D from college. Now, I'm in no means an expert. I do not teach at a university. I work as a graphic designer, or my previous job until I recently moved. I was a graphic designer and I worked at an actual, with an actual art team and so to speak and stuff like that. So that being said, if I don't get some of the terms correct, it's only because I either A, do not know the actual term, and or B, I'm trying to use a term that I feel like it's just become a habit to me, or C, I'm just simply using a term that I feel would be easier to explain to those who have zero knowledge in 3D. So when I say the thingy here, or I say the vertice here, simple things, if it's not the right terminology, I apologize to those who may be offended by making it seem less than what it is. Also, this tutorial will be a bit longer. I know people tend to not want to watch tutorials when they are particularly over 30 minutes, according to some article I read online. Yes, I actually read an article, not just saying that, where usually longer videos usually tend to tune people out. People see that and they're like, I'm not going to spend 30 minutes on a video. This is one of those things that will require time to teach and to pick up. Now, granted, once you do complete your first outfit, the next one just it gets a little bit easier, and the next one gets even easier. I've even come to methods where I can batch 10 outfits in an hour, and you know, and that's without tint maps, of course, because that requires you to sit down and draw. But for the most part, if you have your things and your files all set up, this process, though the teaching it may go on for a bit, once you have it well in mind and you have your steps set in mind of how to do it, an armor, an outfit, whatever you do can take 15 minutes, as little as 10 minutes, depending on how fast you work, if you're trying to like beat your own personal records like I try to do sometimes. Okay, so with that being said, I went ahead and extracted various models from Game of Thrones. And this will be a twofer tutorial. The first tutorial I'm going to show you is this model particularly has two parts. It has an armor and it has an outfit that's exterior to the armor, but I want to connect them both together because Neverwinter Nights 2 can only identify one object within the outfit, and with that one object it can identify one material and textures applying to that material. So it's on you, if you had different parts from different versions of armors, different things put together, to stitch those together in the UVs and have them all on one map, because you can only have one map for your object per material. For that material, unless it's a placeable, which is a whole different thing. So with that being said, I'm going to start moving things around on the computer now and show you exactly what I mean. So this first part of the tutorial is going to be stitching together the maps. This is pretty much preparing your file. If you have If you don't have an outfit, or if you have something in OBJ that you pulled or that you bought or you've created and you want to rig it for the game, this is my method. But if it only carries one texture, then this doesn't apply. You can go ahead and fast forward to the second part of the tutorial. But for those who have an object that has two different maps and you want to push those maps together, go ahead and follow along. So I already have a Blender file open. As you can see in this file, I've extracted a lot of the Game of Thrones Winter is Coming armors here. I've decided to pull the Commander 27 Ranger _ Chief _ Cloth _ Mesh. As you can see, there's a various few armors that I pulled here just for demonstration. Some of these I've already extracted. Some of these I've already converted over. But for the sake of this tutorial, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and combine these two outfits together. Since it's two objects, I have to put the UVs together. That way when we take it into Blender Neverwinter Nights 2, it'll see it as just one object. So the first step, what we're going to do is we are going to clean up the object, and then we are going to combine the object. And then step 3 is we are going to export the object to a new scene, and there we'll tailor it for cloning out. So I know that sounds like a lot of work. It sounds really tedious. Just bear with me, please. Once you got this down, you're good to go. Okay? Well, I hope. If I teach it well enough. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do cleanup. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the actual armor. Actually, I'm gonna turn off the fur because I want to get rid of this cloak. The reason I don't want the cloak in there is because I'd rather have a cloak option in Neverwinter Nights 2 and not take the cloak. So what I did is when I hovered over the cloak, I pressed L to select linked. Everything that's linked here will be selected. I'm gonna click X and I'm gonna delete the faces. That's pretty much getting rid of the cloak. We still have the fur here. And as you can see, the fur kind of has a space. We'll fix that in a little bit. And one thing I did want to do, and now normally what you can do is if you just select L again, actually I'm going to go ahead and go into this mode. It's easier to see. If I select L, I'm going to select the gloves. I can easily just take them off and then delete the exterior, and we can do that. But for the sake that I just want to kind of make this a little more complicated to myself, I'm going to go ahead and cut to the wrist, because sometimes you won't, if you have an outfit, sometimes if you took off the gloves, they're just invisible underneath, and you have to kind of stretch that arm out, which is not pretty. So in this case, because I do kind of like these the way the gloves are and how they're folded over here, I want to trim it just about to right here. So whatever glove you decide to equip, it looks like it's actually just the kind of the undershirt folded over. So you can get some interesting results. In the end, if you don't like it, you can still delete it. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of eyeball. I'm gonna twist it around so I see how we see these lines here. I'm gonna try to get them lined up properly, just to kind of get an idea of where to slice. I'm holding down Control and using the left mouse. I'm gonna highlight to about right there. I'm going to press Z to go back into to get out of wireframe mode. And I'm going to clean up the selection I just chose. And so I'm just going to go ahead and select face mode, which I'm already on. I'm going to start cleaning it up what I selected, because I didn't mean to get all of this. Oops. Okay. And because it is such a rigid object, it may be a little harder to get a perfect line, but considering the model is kind of symmetrized in this way, as long as you cut it like right there is fine, I think. If we need to trim more, we'll trim more. But what I meant is the armor is somewhat symmetrical, the outfit. I need to quit saying armor because not everything's an armor. This could easily be replicated on this side. Now, there are many ways to do that, but for the sake of just being raw, I'm going to do this just as I did the other side. So I'm going to press Z to go into wireframe. I'm going to kind of line up this little area to see where I can line up the faces. Then I'm going to kind of bring it in and select there. Go ahead and do the cleanup. Now, you can eyeball it to see if you're getting the straight result for both sides. For the most part, eyeballing it gets it right. Now I see this one comes in a little more, so I think I have to actually clean it up to about right there. I'm holding down Shift as I select things. Okay. Let's see. An easy way to do this is I start from the top level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I go to the glove level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this actually, and that's my own little reference. Not professional, but it gets the job done. And even if you don't get it right, don't kick yourself over it. You can always fix it later, and it's such a small thing to get right and get wrong anyway, so it doesn't really matter as long as you get rid of the fingers and the hands. Now what you can do later on is you can go back into this model and you can create gloves out of this and do all that. That's on another tutorial. For the sake of just exporting a body, this is what I always do, is I just delete them. Sometimes I do delete the whole glove if I feel like it's just too distracting, but I don't feel like it's going to distract in this version. So I'm going to click X, I'm going to delete faces, okay? And then what we're also going to do is we're going to take out these boots. Reason being is because obviously boots, they don't necessarily come with the model. You can, later on down the line, I'll go ahead and do a nice boot tutorial. Boots are simple to make. Just one of those things people don't make. I don't usually make them. I don't work with the boots. I'm having trouble selecting this. I just have trouble making the boots simply because I have so much on my plate. I don't generally get to them. And you may notice that with some of my outfits, I just kind of do this main part. It's a bad habit of mine. I need to break it. I know. Okay, so I'm gonna click delete faces. All right, and then this is pretty much what we're gonna export out, because we have gloves in game or whenever you're testing your model. If you export it, there'll be other gloves and other boots you can use in the meantime until you actually do export these gloves and boots from this model, if you so choose. Now that's done. That's the cleanup. We cleaned up, we deleted all the stuff we need to delete and get it ready for export. Now we need to combine these two maps together because there are two different objects. Neverwinter Nights 2 does not allow you to have two objects in one outfit, at least unless we want to export this separately as a cloak, and then you can do that. But in this case, I'm not choosing it. I'd like to have this set on the armor because of various reasons. I think the way this model was made is if I take this off, we have some shadow going on underneath here, and that's because it expects the cloak to be, or that fur to be there. So I'm just going to leave it there for the sake of simplicity, and then we're going to work with it that way. Now this may cause problems because we have, when we transfer our weights from another model onto this one, this right here may cause some issues, but we won't know until we actually get into that. I didn't do this beforehand, so if there's an oopsie, well, obviously it's my fault, but we'll try to fix through and work through it, okay? All right, so now that that's done, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these two maps. Now, if we look at the material, and then you have to always click material, then click textures. If you just click texture and nothing shows, in this case, let me see, well, that one does. If nothing shows, just click material, so that way it highlights the material, and go back to the texture and all the textures will show. So this shows the texture we're using right now. Another way to do that also is to hit, go into edit mode, simply by going down here in edit mode. Click A for select all. You can go into UV editing and then press A, and then it'll show you what map it's using. In this case, I already know what map it's using, and if I go into this object and select A, we have this map it's using. So I'm gonna have to combine these two maps because I need everything on one map in order for it to export as one single armor. So I have Photoshop here. I already have it open, and I have the folder where the files are located that were ripped. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag these two maps into Photoshop. There's the first one, and then we have our fur. Now the fur is generally smaller, but for the sake of making this an even sized map, I'm going to turn up the fur by hitting, or maybe I shouldn't use shortcuts because I don't have my shortcut identifier on. Go to image, image size. I'm going to turn this up to 1024 by 1024. I'm going to turn this up to 300 for my sake, simply because I like working with bigger pixels. Does it really matter in the end? It's minimal, simply because it just is. Okay, so I'm gonna make that much, and I'm gonna double check this size. I want these both to be 1024, and there's a reasoning behind that. So I'm just gonna turn this up to 300 and make this 1024. All that does is adds little bits of information within the actual texture itself when we export. It's very minimal at 1K, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so now that we know they're both 1024, I have to do the math in my mind. These are a 1:1 ratio. I'm going to make it a 2:1 ratio, which means I'm going to have two 1024 maps sitting next to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new, or you can simply go to image canvas size of the I'm just going to take this map, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend it. I'm going to go ahead and click anchor. I'm going to anchor it off to on the left side, so that way it pushes out to the right. Another width of 1024. Oops. Okay, width by 1024. Okay, actually I'm going to, and then that should be, bam. And then what I did is I added another 1024 pixels next to this one. Okay, so I'm going to undo that so you can see that again. If you feel like that's too confusing for you, what you can do is simply go to File, New, and just create one with 2048, because that would be two 1024s, but they haven't changed in height, so it would be pretty much 2048 by 1024. Okay, and then you would get this. All right. So for the sake of the first one I did, I'm just going to leave it here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to simply grab this, and I'm going to hit Control A for select all, Control C for copy. I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to hit Control V, and I'm just going to I'm going to hit V or put my selection tool, or my quick select tool, and just move it on over. It should snap into place. All right. And then that's it. That's pretty much our two maps combined. Now, that's the fuse maps. Now we have to combine the normal maps, and an easy way to do that is the same exact way we did the go ahead and turn this off. Is the same way we did the this map right here. So we don't need this anymore. We can go ahead and close that out. Don't save it. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and pull the original armor normal map in, and we're going to pull the let's see, that's the here it is, the fur normal map in. Don't mind the green, the only thing that's registering is the purple anyway. That green is there for a reason. We're going to match the maps up like we did in the last one, so this is going to be 1024. That shortcut is Control Alt I. Okay, we're going to turn up the resolution to 300 like we did before. I'm going to make this 1K at 1024. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to double check this by hitting Control Alt I again. I'm going to turn up the resolution to 300 and make this 1024. Okay, so now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and I'm going to do the same thing. Click on Relative. We're going to push it out to the right. Okay, and we're going to push it out by 1024 pixels. And bam, pushed it out, and that makes space for this bad boy. Control A to select all, Control C for copy, and Control V for paste, and go ahead and slide it on over. All right. Okay. Now we don't have specularity maps, and maybe when we get to the end of exporting the model, I'll adjust the specularity. But for the sake of just getting this first part done, we're just going to leave it at this. So I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to hit Control E to merge them together, and then I'm going to save that out. I'm going to save it under the same name as the first map. Oops, that's a PNG. So I'm going to save it as DDS. Hopefully that name's not too long. I think it should be fine. Commander 27 Ranger Chief. I'm just going to save it as it. And if there's an issue, actually, no, let me just change it now. I'm going to change it to GLT underscore demo or toot underscore D there. Okay, and I'm going to save it as DDS save, and I'm going to save this as a DXT5 because it's a normal map. If you remember from my other tutorials, we have DXT5 for normal maps, and I usually do DXT3 for diffuse maps. And that's just other people will have varied process on that. Some people will use DXT1, no alpha, or interpolate it for their own reasons, their own processes. And I'm going to do the same thing for this map. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these two. I'm going to hit Control E to merge them together. and then I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Shift S for save as DDS, and I'm going to name it the same thing, GOT. Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I got my process backwards. I'm going to go ahead and rename this right here. This should be an actual N for normal map, not D. Okay. So, all right. So Control Shift S, and I'm going to select DDS. I want to hit GOT_TUT for tutorial and D for diffuse map. Save. I'm going to save it as a DXT3. Okay. Save. And that's done. Okay. Now that we've done that, we've pretty much combined these two together via maps. Now we have to align the UVs to match that new map. So when I select this, and I'm going to hit A for selecting the first object, I'm going to go into UVs. Now this is no longer looking like this. It just remembers it from last. So as soon as I hit A again, or I refresh the map, it's going to expand to how it was. Now how UVs work is they work by a ratio format. So as you can see, the UVs are a 1:1 ratio. But now the map, once I click refresh, it's going to jump to what I made it. It was a 2:1. So we got two maps in one. So what's going to do is UVs, how they work is they're going to stretch all the way to the new map, which is obviously going to put the outfit out of whack. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to bring it in. Okay. I'm going to turn off this. I'm going to put it on texture mode so you can see what's going to happen right now. So as soon as I refresh this, the map's going to update and it's going to stretch out to here. The UVs in turn will stretch out to fit the entire map because that's how UVs are. And so I'm going to refresh it right now. Oops, actually I'm going to not refresh it because it's no longer using the PNG name. It's actually here. I renamed it. Stupid me. Okay. There we go. And here's what I mean. See how it stretched out all the way to the end? And as you can see here, it looks way out of whack. No problem. Easy to fix this. The reason I like to keep everything within constraints of 256, 512, 1024, 2048 is it's easier to work with, easier to stitch things together. It's much more modular in terms of scaling back down. That being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix these UVs by having them all selected by pressing A. I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to hit X to lock it in the Z axis. And I'm also going to hold down Control as I shift it back. Now, in the bottom left of the screen, you'll see where it says where it says scale 0.8000. I'm going to bring that down to its 0.5 because that's exactly what I scaled it up to be, is another half, pretty much. I'm scaling it down half to what it was because it stretched out to be twice at what it was, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to hit grab now, and I'm going to hit X. I'm going to bring it on back in increments. If you don't hit X and you just hit grab, this could happen. You have to line it up manually. I like to click grab and lock it on the X axis because it'll stay stuck on the X axis. The reason I use Control is because it moves in increments, and if you scale that down properly, it should automatically go back to where it was and fit in size. Okay, so now that we've aligned this to the new map that we created to have both these maps together, I'm going to go ahead and select A. I'm going to hit Tab to go into object mode. Okay, and I'm going to click on this object now. Then I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to click A over here, and I'm going to search for that new map as well, which is GOT_toot_D. I'm going to double click it, and just like the old map, it stretched to fit the entire map. Before it was at a 1:1 ratio, now it's at a 2:1 ratio. So to fix that, once again, we're going to click S for scale. We're going to click X to lock it in the X axis. I'm going to hold down Control and bring it back down in half, which should be 0.5 on the bottom left of your screen. Once that's done, go ahead and click. Okay, grab by hitting G, press X to lock it in the X axis. Go ahead and Control again to move it in increments, and you should just be able to nudge it on over back into place where it says 512 dimensions, -512. And that's exactly where we're at. And if we click here, and everything should look good. Now, as you notice, both of these are on one map, which means we can go back into default, click A. And what I can do with these two maps now is I stay in object mode. I'm going to click on this fur, then I'm going to hold shift and select the outfit, the fur should now turn into a dark orange and the outfit yellow. The orange will go into the yellow. Anytime you select two objects, the one that was primarily selected will always be the yellow, and the ones following it will be orange. So this is important because you want to know what goes into what. So when I combine these two objects together, the orange will go into the yellow. So I'm going to hit Control J, and now I've combined these two objects together. There's still two different materials, one map, one object now. So that being said, is if I hit tab to go into edit mode and I click A, it selects everything together, and when I go into UV editing, all our UVs are together. So now we're able to export that as one armor. Okay. One thing about this as well is if you go into the armor we just went into and you went into materials, we now have two materials instead of one. One material is the actual, and to see what materials are is the armor, and the other material is the fur. And so to easily see those materials, we're going to click tab to go into edit mode. And if we go to the fur, the armor, and put select, it's going to select that first material, deselect. And then we're going to the second one, select. Now, this is also helpful if you have to go in and edit one thing to make it bigger. In this case, I'm going to show you what I mean right now, because I'm going to go ahead and bring this fur a little bit inside, because it's going to look a little weird walking around with that fur not touching anything in zero gravity. I know it matches up here, so we're going to bring it in a little bit more. And an easier way to do that is to simply select the fur. Instead of going through and manually picking it out from the armor, we can just select the material that it still abides on. So I selected the second one. I click select here. I selected it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scale, and I'm going to hit the Y to lock it on the Y axis. I'm going to bring it in just a bit. Okay, then I'm going to push it back out to the front. All right, and you know, I think that's decent enough. I think that works for us. Okay, I'm hoping, my hope is when we export this into the Neverwinter Nights 2, with the cloak models that you can use in game, they won't clip so much through here. They'll just kind of come through the fur, or if not below it. Now, granted, because when you run, the cloaker is going to rise, it's going to raise, but you know what? There's only so much you can do with Legos. So, and that's pretty much what Neverwinter Nights 2 is at this point. And I preach this often. It's just pretty much an abandoned game made by mods of just broken apart Lego sets. So it's pretty much, it's just a bunch of Legos that people put together from different sets to make different things. It's survivalist. Okay, so now that that's done, we are ready to take this into the next phase, which will be putting the model into Blender, rigging it, and exporting it out to Neverwinter Nights 2. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here, because this is the first tutorial. This is prepping the model. If you have to, in fact, prep a model, sometimes you'll get a model that's just one piece like this, and that should work for you. But in the case that you had to stitch a map, that's how you stitch two UV maps together, two texture maps together to make one map, one universal map, okay? So I will see you in a second when I prepare the next scene, okay? All right, everybody, thanks. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the second part of this tutorial. I had to get up and get a drink anyway. I get pretty dry mouth because I'm still a little bit nervous behind the mic sometimes. All right, so what I did here is I went ahead and opened up a new Blender scene, and I imported Jester's Nude model. You can find that in the Neverwinter vaults. Props to Jester. I like using his model as a reference simply because he redid the weighting, and I like his weights. They're much more accurate than using using a model that comes from the vanilla armors, simply because they're lower poly and they're weighted out. Their weighting is much more liberal, so you may get some clipping errors when transferring out weights. And this one is just much better in terms of quality and weighting, weight management. Now, the reason why I pulled this model is because there are many methods to rigging your model. There are plugins out there. There's actually a plugin in Blender called the Rigify. which it comes with the program. You can use it, and if you want to learn that process, you can just find various tutorials on YouTube showing you how to use the Rigify tool. It pretty much allows you to create a skeleton. It gives you like a base human skeleton. You just move the bones into place. It's a process. You just simply move the bones into place underneath, and then you pretty much rig you parent that to the bones, and it gives it automatic weights, so to speak, in that term, and it weights it. For me, that's just a little bit long than the method I use here, simply because the method I use here, I feel it works for me. I haven't had any issues with it in the past. Every now and then you might receive some issues depending on the outfit you're trying to convert over, and such issues would be whether or not sometimes when you lift an arm, if you ever saw an outfit in game where they're lifting an arm to scratch their head, you get this giant gash of just some of the rib being pulled up underneath the arm. It's because the weights need to be readjusted. This one, when I move the arms out, it should take care of that issue. Also, if you're using an outfit that has an underrobe or an overrobe, I'm sorry, that's tied by a belt, you get these flaring like little parts that come out. What's going to happen is when you transfer the weights over from this outfit onto that one, you get this the robe, it almost feels kind of flaky in a sense where it's really crusty, where it's really not flowing, I guess, so to speak. I wish I had a good example to show you, and I wish I could just pull one right now, but I don't want to make this too long. Either way, usually armors that work best are ones that have a leg option and they aren't robes. Robes can work, but there's a method for that to fix that. I do plan to do one or two more of these tutorials down the line, hopefully soon, where one will actually be a robe and one of them will be a more intricate type armor for either male or female. With that being said, enough chit chat. I am going to go ahead and start the process. So here in this other Blender scene, we have what we did last time. What we recently did is we have the Commander 27 Ranger Chief cloth. We put it together. We stitched those two together. We stitched all the textures together into one texture map. It's still two materials, that's fine. We'll fix that up in the next scene. But what we're going to do is we are going to append. Now, when you append, what that allows you to do is appending will allow you to go into another blend file and pull out certain outfits that you, or certain objects, armatures, and it basically lets you go into another blend file and pull out whatever you want from that file into this file. It speaks through blend files, so it doesn't have to be in OBJ, it doesn't have to be in MDB and FBX. It can be anything. As long as you got it into that blend scene, it'll pull it out. Okay, so I'm going to quickly do that. What I'm going to do is, in order to append, you have to be in object mode. Okay, I'm going to go to file, I'm going to go to append. You can also use it Shift F1. Okay, go ahead and append. Now, pretty much you'll get this right off the bat because you have the plugin. And with the MDB plugin, what it allows you to do is it allows you to it allows you to pull in skeletons that are pre-made within the plugin to help you identify what kind of armor you're pulling in. So this is normal if you see this. Okay, what you do have to do is you have to go into where your game is located. In this case, I have it already set. Go to where you have your save file, where you have saved this file. Okay, where this file is saved. In this case, I have it saved in the Test Armors Game of Thrones GLT Woman Game of Thrones. The reason I had it named as Woman is because I was going to separate out the males from the women's and save it as. In this case, I have not done that yet, so Woman. Okay. Anyways, going back to this one, I'm going to find that same directory, which I have already saved here, but if I have to, you know, see usernames, Test Armors Game of Thrones Woman. Okay, now we're in the actual blend file. It's saying, what do you want to take out of that blend file? What do you want to pull from this file? Okay, as long as this file is saved, which I'm going to do now. I'm not sure if I did that, so I'm gonna go back, and then I'm gonna do it again. File, append, Game of Thrones Woman. Okay, now that it's saved, it'll update here. I'm gonna go into objects. Okay, now these are all the objects that are from this file. Okay, now the one we're looking for is Commander 27 Ranger Chief Cloth. All right, so I'm gonna go back over here and I'm gonna go to Commander 27 Ranger Chief Cloth and go ahead and double click that. All right, now we brought it in. Woohoo! Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to align the outfit to the. I want to align our Game of Thrones outfit to our nude model as close as I can. The closer I get it, the less work I have to do in the end. Okay, so step one, align the model both in the front and from the left and right axis. So to do that, I'm going to simply go to hit scale and scale it on up, okay, to where I feel like it's sizable. Now, keep in mind that because we have this fur, we tend to think, oh, that right there is fine. The fur is actually above the armor, so it kind of gives it more of a hunch. Now, if you have trouble seeing that, you can hit escape. If you have trouble seeing that, you can go into Z to wireframe and you can hit scale that way. And in some cases, this helps. For me, I found that certain armors like this usually are better when I use it just through texture mode and I kind of see it visually. And I'm going to scale up this way. Now, the reason why it's covering in front of the armor is because if I hit, I'm gonna bring this top of the neckline to the top of that neckline, just as a first reference, okay? And I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna hit 3 on my number pad, and that's gonna turn it sideways. And when I hit G for grab, I'm gonna hit Y to lock it into Y axis. I'm gonna gently bring it on in, okay? Now I want to try to get it as close as possible to the armor. Now, if we see where the head model will generally go, that looks like it's a pretty good fit, which is why I chose this Game of Thrones model, because I feel like it doesn't fit exactly, because obviously these hands aren't fitting to this hand, and it gives you just enough, it gives me just enough to make the tutorial out of it, where I don't have to go crazy and you don't have to sit here for 2 hours watching me edit, rather than just make a few edits to show you the process, and then you can kind of take that process to wherever you'd like from there. So as I spin around here, I see that these legs are looking good. Everything's looking fine. The arms are a little short, but we're going to fix that. Now, most models you'll have to do this with if you're exporting from anything else, or if you're importing an OBJ, unless you made the model yourself to be that size. Neverwinter Nights 2 skeleton is a little bit wonky that way. It's not realistic. As much as people complain that, well, the Neverwinter Nights 2 skeleton, this armor doesn't look right, this outfit doesn't look right, it's not right. And those who have taken anatomy, you know, everybody has their own opinion. I've done this various types of outfits. Almost every outfit that I've had to do this to, I've had to stretch the arms out. And the reason being in this case is and to play it fair is, yes, the Game of Thrones armor, this armor is kind of bent at the hand, at the arm. But even then, it's still kind of long, and it all matters. You know, this armor, I admit, this Game of Thrones armor, it does seem kind of, the arms do seem kind of short, but not all the outfits that I pull, rarely any of them ever come to this exact point. They'll at the most probably come here, and that seems like a little bit, but in game that actually makes a big difference. And I don't want to make a purpose mistake to show you. Just if you ever do make that mistake, you'll see exactly what I mean. Now, sorry for that whole spill. Let's get to the process. So now that that's done, that's fairly close. That's where I want it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly how the armature here will control the mesh. Because what we're going to do is we're going to move this mesh into the same place as the Game of Thrones outfit. That way we're able to transfer the weights from this mesh onto the Game of Thrones outfit. Now, when we do that, the next step is we are going to now bring the new Game of Thrones outfit, now that it has a bone or meshes to adhere to, we're going to bring it back into place. So to do that, and it sounds confusing, but bear with me because hopefully I'll demonstrate it better than I tell it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the skeleton. I'm going to go into right here, this little, it looks like a little man. It's the data options. I'm going to go ahead and click that, okay? And I'm going to turn off names because it'll turn off all these little names, which makes it kind of confusing. And I'm also going to turn on X-ray. And what that does, it allows me to look through the actual armor. It X-rays through everything, so this would help. This does help. What does, could, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the actual mesh now. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to go ahead and hit. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said click on the mesh because I clicked right back onto the skeleton. So click back onto the skeleton, and I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate the skeleton. As long as I haven't pressed anything, I should be able to move it around like this. Okay, but I'm not going to move it around. I'm going to hit Escape. That just means you didn't decide to move it, you just duplicated it. So now I have two skeletons. I have PHHM skeleton and then PHHM skeleton .001. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to rename this skeleton to Move Me. Okay, so this is the one we're going to move. This one we are going to go ahead and turn off the we're going to restrict our able to touch it later, and we're going to turn it off on viewport. We don't need it right now. We're going to use it as a reference for our way back home. And when I say way back home, hopefully that makes sense. That makes more sense when we get to the next step, because that's what I'll be referring it to as. All right, so now that we have this Move Me skeleton, if we go into we go ahead and expand it, or if you go into the skeleton here, you have three options. You have edit mode and pose mode. Edit mode is if you want to edit where the bones are at. In this case, we don't need to, we don't want to, no point in doing it. No point in teaching it because it does not apply here, okay? We're gonna go into pose mode. Now what this allows us to do is we're allowed to, we can click single bones and we can move them around to pose the skeleton, to move it. But when I move this skeleton, I'm selecting here, I'm selecting this one, I'm in R, rotate. I don't recommend ever using these arrows. See what happens? Don't ever use the arrows because the skeleton wasn't really rigged to be used that way. It's just, it doesn't work well with the arrows, even when you have inverse schematics on, or auto IK. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I shouldn't even shown you that. I tend to use only two views when moving the bones. Is the side view by hitting 3 and control 1 for the front view. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit R for rotate. I'm going to move it around, but that mesh should be moving with these bones, but however, it's not. Reason being is what we want to do is we want to grab that mesh and we're going to go into the modifiers, okay? And it's still modified to, it's still following the skeleton of the one we have that we hid. What I want to do is I want to change that object modifier. It already has a skeleton modifier, armature. I'm going to change it to Move Me. So now it's parented to this skeleton. And the reason why it's parented is because it has weights assigned to it, and weights are assigned to, for example, arm 1. If I go into weight paint, see how arm 1, and that's this muscle right here. You can't see it unless I turn off this object. Pretty much this bone controls all of this part. So if I were to move this bone, this will move with it, but in turn, everything else follows with it. So from here on out, pretty much is how it works, because these are all parented downward from the inside. So this controls this, controls that, controls that, controls this, that. So just like a robotic would. All right. So the reason I'm saying that is because this that's how we're going to move our skeleton. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and bring this back in. I'm going to, now that I've tethered this to the Move Me skeleton, I'm going to go back into the Move Me skeleton. And if you're not in pose mode, for some reason you were back in object mode, just simply go back into pose. Okay. And I'm going to click rotate now. And as I rotate, I'm going to hold down control to move it in chunks. Now, if we look on the bottom left, you'll see where it says 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I tend to move it in chunks because it's easier to remember and easier to deal with than moving it separately like this and moving it. Because whatever you move this bone, you've got to move the exact side. You have to imitate the other side of the bone. Now, normally some modifiers allow you to mirror them. Whereas if I move this one, the other one moves in the same direction. The Neverwinter Nights 2 skeleton is not good with that, simply because of this little bone right here, which is the shield bone. Now you can delete that and try to mirror that, but that's a whole different process I'm not willing to teach right now because it just makes things confusing for those who do not know how to work armatures and weighting to begin with. God, I hope this is coming out okay for some of you. Okay, so with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit control to move in increments. I'm going to move it at 10, roughly, because it looks like it's about 10, yeah? So what I meant is I'm going to click, I'm going to go on this side, and I'm going to move the same thing. Hit R for rotate, hit control, bam, bam, 2 points, 10, just like that, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with this old skeleton. I'm going to turn off this fur because it's in our way. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select that second object. I'm going to hit H, to take a look at it. So it looks good for the most part. Now I do notice the arms kind of come forward here, so we'll fix that right now. Okay, so when I go back into the Move Me tool, I'm going to select this one and this forearm by holding Shift, and I'm going to press 3. Now there's a lot going on here, so one thing we can do is we can go into Data Modifier and we can turn off X-Ray. We know we have them selected. We know we have the forearm selected, so it's still selected. I'm going to hit R for rotate, and I'm going to rotate them forward. Now you can also go into solid mode if for some reason you're having trouble with the way it's looking with all the texture and detail. So I'm going to hit R for rotate. I'm going to hit Control and bring it in 5, 10, 15. About 15 seems about right. So we're lining up pretty good with the model, okay? That looks good. We're lining up pretty good. So 5, 10, 15. So we know that we moved texture. We know that we moved, I'm turn X-ray back on. These two bones moved out 10 and these moved 15 in, or 15 forward. You can write that down if you'd like. You can put arm 1, 2, out 10, 15 if you have trouble remembering. But we shouldn't have any trouble remembering. We did make a lot of edits sometimes if you're working with certain models. I know I've imported Skyrim Witcher models. Sometimes you got to move the collarbone back and forward, and you got to move some of these around. Luckily, this armor is easy enough where you just make 1 or 2 edits, and then that's it. So we don't have to write it down. I'm going to show you why in a second, unless you actually want to. Up to you. Okay. So now that that's done, what we're going to do now is we are going to go ahead and click off of that. We're going to go back into our body, and we're going to go back into our armature. Now that we've moved the mesh, we no longer want this to control the mesh. You want to say, okay, commit those changes to the mesh and leave it like that. So we're going to click apply. It's saying apply, modifier, and remove from the stack, which is what we want to do. So we're going to hit apply, bam. And what we did is now that movement, that pose that we moved the mesh into will stay like that. So if we go back into Move Me, and I were to go back into and I make more movements, it's not going to move anymore because this mesh is no longer applied to this skeleton, which is okay. That's what we want. We don't want to move it anymore. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for now. We're going to come back to it because we need it to bring it back into place, to bring it back home, as I stated before. Okay. So now that we've done this, the reason why we're doing this is because we're going to transfer our weights from this mesh onto our new object. And the best way to get that transfer, the most accurate way, is by bringing that mesh to the skeleton itself. So you get pretty much face-to-face transfer. So that's what we're going to do next, which is step 2. Step 2 is transferring the weights. So we're going to go ahead and select our commander chief outfit. We're going to go ahead, and we don't need this right now. We can delete that modifier. That just comes because it came with the game as is. We're going to go to data transfer. Data transfer, data. I don't know how some of you like to say it. Okay. We're going to click vertex data, vertex groups. All right. And from here, we're going to select nearest face interpolated. Most times, none of these will work good for you. This is the best option. Actually, only time I've never had to use anything other than nearest face. The rest won't give you the results that this one will give you. Okay. Now what we're doing here is we're telling this outfit that we are going to transfer data from another object. We're going to transfer its vertex data, which is vertex groups, which are the weights, these little groups. We're going to transfer those groups. Okay. And now, normally you will have deleted these. I'll come back to this. Don't even worry about what's there right now. So what I'm telling this is we're going to transfer the vertex groups. Nearest face is this type of style, the type of transfer. That's technical. Don't worry about that. And we're going to choose what we're going to transfer it from. And we're going to steal it from the HHM Body 02, which is the Jester's Nude model. I'm going to click that. And before I do that, I'm just going to go in and let you know, just because I saw this right now. Sometimes some models that you export or import from other games and other rigs and other stuff, they have bones already applied to them. In this case, there's no point in having them because there's no skeleton that came with it. Now, maybe later on down the line when I do another tutorial, I'll teach you how to import an XPS model, or an XNA Lara model, or certain other models that already have pre-modified bones in them, which make it easier because then you can just move the armor back to the original Neverwinter Nights 2 position and transfer that way. In this case, we're bringing the model to we're bringing the Neverwinter Nights 2 model to our Game of Thrones outfit, transferring the weights just to bring it back. God, I gotta stop circling around that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just delete all of these. Delete all groups. There's no need for them. We don't need them. They are applying to a different skeleton, one that we don't even have in here. So now we're going back to this. All right, the data transfer. As I've stated, we are transferring from this mesh to this outfit. So now that we're on this outfit, we're going to click Generate Data Layers. Okay, and once we do that, nothing seems to happen. But if we go into weight mode, weight paint, and we are going to go ahead and click on our... let me go ahead and unhide everything. I'm going to hit Alt-H to unhide that. Okay. And I'm going to go back into weight paint. And I'm going to look at see how our weight's transferred. I'm going to hit Z for scale, grayscale. I mean for scale. For wireframe scale. Okay, ribs. And if we notice now we have weights. And these weights are transferred from the mesh underneath, which is that Neverwinter Nights 2 mesh. So it transferred the Lego 1, pelvis, Lego 2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time because I know I kind of botched that up with this whole explaining this whole pre-weights thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click off of that. Okay, and if we go back into here, I'm going to delete all the groups. All right, I'm going to jump out of this. And here's how I'm going to do it from the beginning. Just one more time, okay? I'll feel comfortable knowing I have retaught it one more time in a better way. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to grab this new outfit. We are going to still transfer the weights from our Neverwinter Nights 2 model onto our new outfit. So that way the game can recognize it and put it in and know exactly pretty much idle animations and all animations can work with it. So it can be read, pretty much. So I'm going to go ahead and add a modifier. I'm on my new armor, my new outfit. Data transfer, vertex data. I'm going to transfer the vertex groups nearest face. I'm going to select my original body, Neverwinter Nights 2, and I'm going to put generate data layers. And in order to see those, I'm going to go into weight paint. And I'm also going to go into wireframe. And now, as we can see, we have weights on our new model, which otherwise had none a moment ago. And it should transfer the collared owl one. And if you can always fix these later if you feel like some of them didn't come out right. But for the most part, I think just by my experience in doing this for as long as I have, these are looking pretty decent. Looks like everything's going to turn out okay. So once we are satisfied, you must always apply before moving on painting and doing anything else. If you forget to apply, nothing's going to transfer in the end. And in order for this to properly apply, you have to make sure that this right here is not invisible. It has to be visible still, even when you apply it. So make sure that your visibility is still on for this Neverwinter Nights 2 model. So we're going to apply. Now that we've applied it, we no longer need this model. We can turn it off or delete it. In this case, I'm just going to turn it off. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and go back into this model, go back into texture, and go back into edit mode. All right, now that we have weights assigned to it, we're pretty much ready to export it out. But before to do that, we have to move the bones back in place. Now, if you remember from earlier, and this is step 3, bringing the mesh on home, okay? And when I say that is, remember we have the move me? We moved it in place to actually just to get the original mesh to match up with the object, our new outfit, and we did that. So now that that's done, we're going to use this same skeleton. Now that this outfit has weights that apply to this skeleton, now we're going to assign this outfit to this skeleton and then move it back into place. And along with that, as the skeleton moves back into place, this new armor outfit's going to move with it. And so we're going to move it back into the place that Neverwinter Nights 2 originally had, so it reads it in-game properly. Because if not, then you'll have floating hands right here, and the armor will be floating out of place, and it just won't look good. So that's the reason why we also kept this skeleton, the original. We hid it earlier, because we're going to use it as our reference to bring it on home. And that being said, let's jump into it. Okay, so to do that, we're going to click our object. And actually first, we're going to click move me. And we're going to select all, okay? We're going to go to pose, and we're going to zero out the pose. And when we zero out the pose, that just pretty much, it means that from when it was first moved to where it moved to, that data is still copied in there. Which means if we go into this model and we apply the armature and we put move me, it's going to move it even more because it's applying that data from when it originally moved to how it moved to now. Okay? So if I were, like I said, if I were just to take that off, nothing would happen. But if I go to armature and I apply the move me without putting it into a rest position first, it's going to say, hey, we noticed this moved 10 paces that way, this moved 10 paces that way, this moved 15 paces forward, this moved 10. So when I applied the armature to this outfit again, the same one, it's going to redo all that again. Bam, it moved this 10 more that way, 10 more that way, this more forward. In order to not have that happen, what we have to do is we have to first rest the pose, which is also zeroing out the pose. So we're going to go into pose mode, okay? If you're in object mode for some reason, you go into pose mode on this skeleton, the move me skeleton. Select all by pressing A, go to a pose, apply as rest pose. We've now zeroed it out, okay? That being said, if we go back into here now and we go to add armature and we add it to the move me, nothing moves. Because from here on out, whatever moves you make to this again are going to apply to the new skin, okay? Now, I'm not liking the way that looks because when you itch, when the guy reaches to scratch his head, it's going to cause issues, but we're not here to tweak weights. We're just here to get it done and see it in game. That's all I'm satisfied with doing right now. I'm not trying to go in depth. Okay, so that being said, we are now able to move this skeleton and move this with it without having it interfere with what it did previously. So now that we've done that, we've went ahead and we've applied this armature. I'm going to redo that again. I'm going to add armature, move me, and now this, and don't click apply yet because we're not done with we're going to use this to move it to where we got to go in place, then we'll apply it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn back on our visibility of our original HHM skeleton, okay? And what we're going to do is we're just going to bring these new bones back into position, okay? So I remember, if I remember correctly, this one went 10 paces, 1, 2, which is 10. If you look down here, I'll show you right now. And you can know because you can swing around and you can kind of get an idea. You'll see how it matches up in place. If you don't remember, just do your best to bring it back into place. That's all you got to do. And this one 10. So I'm going to hit R for rotate, hit control, and on the bottom left where it says rot for rotation, I'm going to hit move it 1, 2, 5, negative 10. Enter. Okay? Now, if I remember correctly, these ones moved up 15. Or is it 5? Or is it 10? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to hit 3. Okay? I'm going to hit rotate, hit control, 1, 2, 3. Well, it was 15. Well, maybe 14. Yeah, it was 14. Let me redo that. If for some reason, okay, so I did move it in increments of 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and if you notice, it's a little bit bigger. So if I hold shift and then I bring it back in, it'll move in increments of 1. See, 13, 14, 14. There we go. All right. Now, we didn't have to move the legs, thankfully, because like I said, this model kind of fit perfectly into what we were trying to do. That's all we got to do. Now, that was bringing it on home. We brought the mesh on back home. Now, one thing I did notice is, if we want to take notice, is the move me, this right here, these wrists should go to, if you look here, if I mentioned this previously, if you look, there's a blue line. If I turn off the old skeleton, you have this blue line. What's that? Oh, something's not right. Oh, I see what's going on. All right, so I'm gonna bring that in a little bit more. Maybe it was 15. Let me see. 1 second. That's my mistake. Did I bring those in? I mean, it's close enough to a point where, but I feel foolish making a mistake here and not realizing what I did. I mean, it should be just about there. I don't know why it's doing that. It says, hey, we're going to make you look stupid today on your tutorial because payback is a bitch for all the times. I don't know. All right, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. I'm not gonna worry about that. It's really minuscule. It's not something big. Going back to what I was saying, what we want to do is we want to bring this collar or this wrist, the actual the collar of the wrist here. We want to bring it to where this blue line is, the center of this ball, because this is where the glove starts. The glove starts from here, and it comes to the center of this ball. So we want to at least make sure we get that there. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to, on this move me, while we're still on it, we're going to click 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to hit scale on the Z axis, and we're going to stretch it out just until it hits the center, if not a little bit more, depending on how you want it. Okay. Now, keep in mind, this is where the shield attaches, so you want to make sure you have something there. That feels just about right. You can always fix it later. And I know it looks a little weird now, but this is only used as to move the mesh. It's not something the skeleton stays at. It's not going to stay. The fingers don't come out this long because there's nothing here. There's technically no data. And to show you what I mean, I'm just going to continue on. So with that being done, we've moved this mesh back to where we want it, into the original Neverwinter Nights 2 pose. Okay. And now that we've done that, we're going to go into our object, and we're going to go into the modifier. We're going to click apply. Okay. Bam. Now that it's applied, anything further we move in this model doesn't matter because it's already applied and it's erased it from its stack, which means it's no longer a modifier for it. We used it to modify only the object. Once we're done using it to modify it, in this case, modified it to move into place, it's no longer needed. We can now delete this. We no longer need it. If you feel like you may have to come back to it, you can always turn it off. In this case, we're going to do a step 3, which is clean up and export. Clean up the scene by deleting everything that doesn't belong in the scene. Now, the only things we need are the calls files that we took from the original model, which is the files that came with the Neverwinter Nights 2 model. We need the skeleton because we need to tie this to the new skeleton, and then we can delete this. We no longer need the original mesh. It served its purpose. It gave us weights to transfer from. Going to delete that, and then we're ready to export. So that's cleaning up the scene. Now we're going to export. So to export, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this into something that the game can read, which if you understand how the naming algorithm goes, or the terminology for naming, I'm just going to name it as the Cloth 01 armor, as I do with most of my tutorials, so you can see it in the character creation menu and work on from there. Now, to do that, I'm going to name it P_HHM_CL_body01. Whether you want to capitalize that or not, it's up to you. Have fun with it. Go nuts. All right. So I'm gonna double click that. I'm gonna hit Control C to copy it, because I'm also going to go ahead and do what I do with all of my models. I'm gonna work my way right or left to right, whatever you choose. In this case, I'm doing left. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check the modifier. Does it have a modifier? Does it have an armature? No, it doesn't. Okay. Add an armature. Okay. And then what I like to do is I like to Control C and I like to copy it, Control V here. You don't have to click inside to copy it. If you hover over it and hit Control C, you can hover over and hit Control V. That being said, I'm going to go back into here and copy this again, because I'm going to need to use that as I work my way to the right. Okay, so next is we are going to go into our mesh options. Does the mesh match the object? No, it does not. We must Control V, make sure it matches the object. This must match this, or else the game will not read it right. Do we have our weights? Yes, we do. Don't worry about UV. As long as you have a UV map and that's fine. No matter what its name is, it'll rename it in the export. Jumping to the right, going to materials. Do we have one material? No, we do not. We need to delete all excess materials and only keep one. We're going to delete the fur and only keep the first one. Now that that's done, does the material match the object? No, it does not. Control V. Does the material match the object? The object and the material now match names. Neverwinter Nights 2 will read this correctly. Does the material and the mesh match the object? Yes, those three must always match all the time. If there's even a little bit of a mismatch, it will not read it. It will show up as invisible. Okay, those three must always match. Now, the materials there, the textures, let's assign the textures. Normally the normal map goes in the second spot, so what I do is I go ahead and bring it on down and then by doing that, you select it, bring it down, come back up to the texture. Now, normally in my other tutorials, I tell you, you can just do the mapping. You can do this in the MDB cloner. In this case, for these armors, I just have been doing it here just because it's something you can teach. Why not? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new texture. Okay, and it's going to say texture. I'm going to open and I'm going to find that file. Okay, now that file I had was in Game of Thrones. I think it was in characters. Just find out where you have your original files. In case you need to know which ones you're looking for, they're the ones we made in the first part of the episode, where they're called GOT_toot_D and GOT_toot_in. Now I know where I have those files, so I'm going to that directory and I'm going to go ahead and go to Commander 27. I think it's wherever you have your files, Chief, Ranger Chief High. Here we go. And I'm going to select it right here. Game. That's the first one's going to be the diffuse map. Okay. I'm going to grab the name right here. I'm going to Control-C to copy it. And I'm going to copy it into the texture name, okay? Now this one is the normal map. I'm going to go ahead and find that normal map that came with it, the one we remade that has 2 of them. I'm going to select that one, okay? This is just assigning the textures now. I'm going to Control-C and then paste it here in the name. So there's our textures. We've assigned our textures to it. Now we're pretty much ready to export this model. However, there's one thing I wanted to jump at, and we'll get into that. Actually, we'll get into that after. Let's go ahead and export this model out. All right. Now, I do, we can turn off the skeleton just for the hell of it, or we can turn off the X-ray if you feel like it's bothering you. It doesn't matter how you can even have this off when you export. It doesn't matter because the scene exports as it is. Okay. Now, looks like we got some normals in there, so hopefully we won't have any issues. And when we say normals, is we have faces that are facing inward and faces that are facing outward. Yeah, we should be fine. Okay, now that that's done, we are ready to export. All right, so if you remember our steps, step 1 was to move the mesh into place to transfer the weights. That's what we did first time. We moved that Neverwinter Nights nude model into a position to transfer the weights to our our Game of Thrones model, and then we transfer the weights. Okay, step 2 was pretty much bringing it back home, and then pretty much, yeah, we brought the model back into the Neverwinter Nights 2 position, and we synced it. We got everything done. Step 3 was cleaning up. We cleaned up the scene and export. So to export, I'm going to go ahead and copy this one more time. I'm going to go to File, Export. Oops, File, Export. Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm going to click Smooth TS Seams, Alpha Test. For any other modders out there, if there's one thing I'm missing, let me know and why. I'm always up for learning something that I don't know. I just know these 2 have always worked for me the best. If there's something in here I'm not seeing that maybe I should have gotten, go ahead and let me know. I'm not not the best at this, but it's just the process I've used. Okay, so I'm going to go to my my override where I have my Game of Thrones my override folder, and simply put, it's in my documents, Neverwinter Nights 2 override, and I created a demo. I just put it in demo, and I'm going to hit Control V, C, and the reason I did that is because I just copied the name over. Export. Okay, now that that's exported, I'm going to go into that where I have it. That's this file right here in my override. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and copy over those 2 texture maps that I did. The GOT2, the ones we did here in Photoshop earlier. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy them over. I'm not going to move them yet because if I have to, for some reason, make edits and I just want to back up, once I'm satisfied, I can delete this folder and no longer have 2 copies of it on my hard drive. But for the most part, that should show up in game. This is a live test, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's see. I'm just gonna go into Neverwinter Nights 2. It's gonna run the vanilla version. Okay. Let that load up. And I'm going to go into simply just new game, new module, choose the original module that it comes with it, uninvited guests, just because I just need to see it in this preview. Create character, and we're going to go to human. And I forgot to delete an old armor I was working on. 1 second, my mistake, kind of embarrassing. Let me go ahead and turn that off. And I am going to go into that old armor. And here I was thinking I had it all figured out. I'm going to delete that original one, cancel, drop that down. I'm going to start this again. Let that boot up. Okay, go ahead and bring that up here. New game, new module, uninvited guest, start module. Okay, I'm going to go to select or create character, human, and there we go. There's our model that we exported. Now, as you can see, it has a bit of a shine to it. We're going to fix that. That's where the specularity map comes in place. Now, also, I've noticed if I go close here, I can see right off the bat that maybe this neck has to come out a little more. Maybe I'll fix that too. Okay. Don't worry about the face. This is part of a face pack I've been working on. It's something a work in progress. Okay, so yeah, some faces vary, so it's up to you. I maybe bring that back a little bit more. It has a bit of a shine on it where it doesn't need to, so here's how we fix that. And the reason why we haven't done that is because I'm going to go and close out these, and we can fix that live, because as you've seen in some of my other tutorials, edits that you make here now will exist into the module as long as you click off the armor and click back on the armor. So that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up the normal map in here. Okay, and then one thing I've noticed is on the normal map, we didn't give it an alpha channel, so it's all shiny. Okay, and the reason why it's all shiny is because here our texture, if we go into our material, we have these specularity right here, which we haven't made yet. Now, when I say that, I'm just going to go ahead, usually I turn these up to 0.7. Once again, ladies and gents, this is my process. Yours may differ. Okay, 0.7. That gives it enough of a shine, and I'm just going to save that out. I'm going to export it out again. Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm just going to override what I first had in there, and I should be able to click off the armor and click back on, and just right off the bat, you see what happens here? It's got shinier all around. It's because in this normal map, everything's white. The intensity of what goes into normal and the alpha channel of the normal map, this controls the specularity. So if I were to turn this completely black, that means there's no shine, no luster in this at all. So if I save that out, and I save it, as of course it's a DXT5, and I save that out, let that save. Okay, and I click off of it and I click back on it. The shine is less. Well, in this case it's more. It's because it's all in this bad boy. Let me turn this down to 0.5, because that's what it should have been. And if we go into like material, we can see how that shine goes. See that shine? Turn this up to 50. See that shine? If I turn this up to like 200, it gives it a more particular shine. It contrasts more of the shine. That's what I want. Maybe like a 200. Okay, and I'm gonna go to export Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm gonna override it again. I'm gonna click on it and off of it and on it rather. Okay, now that's just a good base shine. Now that that's done, I'm gonna make sure this doesn't shine and this does. To do that, what we're gonna do is go into normal map, and this is how I quickly create my own specularity maps. Sometimes when you pull from other games and other things, spec maps will be made for you. In this case, none was. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out my diffuse map by hitting Control A, Control C to copy it. I'm going to move on over to the alpha channel of the normal map, and I'm going to paste it in there. It should automatically turn black and white because the alpha channel can only hold black and white. Now what this controls is the intensity of shininess. So the more white, the more shine, the less white, the less shine. Obviously, this shouldn't be shining. This should be black, but these metal pieces should be really white. Some of it should be really white. The fur should be black. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control D to deselect it. I'm going to hit M. I'm going to make this fur pure no shine. Fur should not shine unless it's fake fur, and no one needs pleather or fake fur. So I'm going to make it pure black. That just means it's not going to have any luster at all. For this side though, what I am going to do is I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to Image, Levels, and I'm going to turn down those darks. So where this clothing is barely shining, I'm gonna crunch up those brights so the metal really shines. Okay, maybe not too much. I want to give it like a scruffy shine, and that's pretty good. It doesn't have to be. It can be dramatic like this, but I think dramatic usually calls for a better feel sometimes, especially when you have armors that are mixed with metal and non-metallic surfaces. I'm going to click Control S for save DXT5, and I think that's pretty much a good base for my specularity for this armor. They vary. This requires a certain touch, some practice to get used to, and just to get it all done all around. So we're going to click on female. I'm going to go back to male, and let's see. Didn't really do too much. Something's not right here. Yeah, it looks like that shine is actually coming from the specularity of the actual object. Let me turn that down to 100. Yeah, it shouldn't be shining that much. Not on that lid, because that's completely black. That should not be shining at all. This should all be black. Once again, one of those moments where the game's like, screw you. I know you're doing a tutorial, and I'm seeing now why it's doing that. Because if I do this, I am saving the file in the wrong spot. This is the one I'm saving, so I'm gonna overwrite it. Copy here. I was working out of my old where I copied the files from, not to where I copied the files to. Hence, I was not working out of the override. So I'm gonna replace the file there, and now it should work. So there we go. And see how the specularity just took that shininess away. Now this has become really dull too. You can't really tell the difference. So this is where that material really comes in handy. So if I were to turn this up to back to 100 and make this just like that, let's see what that looks like. File, export, Neverwinter Nights 2, demo. Okay, I'm gonna click off of it, back on it. And yeah, see how we got a little more of a shine? If we really want to make that shine more, we can either we can make the shine much more clear here by undoing and just going to image adjustments levels. Now I know I'm working out of the old file still. I'm gonna crunch that down a bit, bring that in just a lot like that. Okay, and I'm gonna save this, and I know this is gonna save in the old directory. I'm just gonna move it on over just because I don't feel like redoing it all in the new one. That being said, in order for me to see the changes, I have to once again copy it over to my new override, replace it. Now if you were already working in your old override, you're fine, you're good to go. And I'm just gonna see what that did right off the bat. Yeah, well, you know, it's all hit and miss. It's up to you. I think for the most part it looks okay. Now you can always go back into, and this tutorial is almost done. I swear to God, this is the very end of it all. I'm just showing you what the intensity of specularity can do. If you were to turn it up to 200, it makes it much more. What it does is the higher you go, the contrast between black and white gets much more fine-tuned, meaning the black is less likely to shine as much, but the whites are less likely to shine as more. As you can see, it's demonstrated here. It gives it a real nice curve in the armor. Now, the reason why it kind of shows a little bit, just not as much, is because this doesn't really do a great job of previewing it without using nodes and using blender cycles and stuff like that, where it really matters. If you don't know what that means, no biggie. I'm just going to export it again one more time, and if I can't get it, then we're just going to call it anyway and just say, hey, hopefully you learned what I was trying to teach. You were picking up what I was putting down. Okay, so that's about as best as I can get it at the moment. You know, anything else where if you want to go and fix these bottoms, that's easy to fix. If you noticed in this may be a little too forward, I can bring it back one notch, and the neck, it looks like I can bring backwards one notch. Simply doing that because this is part of the tutorial. I wanted to show you, just like I did with my other armors, just like I did with my other tutorials. In order to make changes from here on out, what I'm going to simply do, and then I'm going to do this real quick, is I'm going to duplicate the skeleton again. I'm going to change this armature to match that new skeleton. Go into that skeleton, go into pose mode, click on X-ray. I'm going to grab it by the thighs right here, and I'm going to click rotate, hold control and shift just to move it slightly back one notch there. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my outfit, click apply, delete the skeleton, no longer need it. We've applied it, we've used it to modify our mesh. I'm going to put this armature back onto the original HHN skeleton, copy it here, paste it there, and then go ahead and file export Neverwinter Nights 2, and I'm going to click demo. I'm going to put where I had it before, save it out there, and now when I click on and off it again, we'll see that we've lined up that outfit a little more. Now in order to fix that stuff, that's all in post. I mean, that's all stuff you can fix on your own, simply because this is part of the tutorial and I don't want to leave you with questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go into here, and go into edit mode, and I'm going to turn off the skeleton for the sake of that. I'm going to click L on these two bad boys. We don't need these little cones here. That was for the old model. Don't know why you're doing that. Just select. I'm going to delete those. Okay, and then now that I deleted those, I think that's what was causing it to give those little clipping issues. I also said I was going to turn up the neck some. Now an easy way to do that is I'm going to select here. Okay, I'm going to turn on proportional editing. I'm going to click enable. I'm going to hit S for scale, and I'm going to keep scrolling inward to turn up that sphere of influence, as I've explained in other models before that I worked on. I'm going to put it about right here, and I'm going to start pushing it out a little more, and then maybe push it backward. If you don't see what I'm doing here, I'm pushing it backward. And then what that sphere of influence is doing, it's allowing me to have a much wider neck. This is also good for, I'm going to ask for scale on the x-axis. This also is good in case you get some heads that are custom created and they don't fit the model well. It'll give you more of a chance to fit more heads than just the simple vanilla heads. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to hit File, Export, Neverwinter Nights 2. I'm going to go back into where I exported it again, double click there, and click on it, off of it, just like that. And we turned up the neck some. If you're not satisfied with that, you can always go in and edit, and I showed you how to do that. Same thing with these legs here. If you want to turn those inward, all you have to do is simply go back into here and turn off the skeleton so you can see. I'm going to select one, and I'm going to hit Shift and Alt and select the rest. And this, if we press Z, we selected everything within here. So I'm going to deselect all of that. Okay. I'm going to hit S for scale, turn up that sphere of influence. I'm going to hit S for scale, hold control, bring it in. Well, actually, you know what? I'm hitting control plus, by the way, to expand more. Hit S, bring it in one, maybe just one. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for this side now. I'm hitting control and shift to deselect by selection like this. And then I'm going to hit scale again. Hold down control and bring it back in one. Boop. Actually, you know what? I think I had it selected. Scale one. Okay. And I'm just going to save it out just like that. Export Neverwinter Nights 2. Demo. And yeah, we've cleaned it up good enough. You got the gist of how to make the edits from here on out. So same thing for the wrists. If you want to expand those, you can go ahead and do that by either of the two options I showed you. If you feel like you want to pick up the armor more, you can pick it up more. If you feel like it's too low, you can just simply go back in and go into scale mode or wireframe. Just press B to select by box, and then just simply pick it up just a little more. If you want to make your pickup more fluid, you can press G and turn up your influence a little more so it picks up more like this. So it gives it more of a hunchback. File, export. And when I say hunchback, I don't mean hunchback. It just gives it more body up on top. I'm just going to override again. I'm going to turn this a little bit on and off. There we go. If you feel like that's more realistic for you, that's more better. Okay, if that's better for you, then that's good to go. So, in turn, we were able to grab an extracted model from Game of Thrones, Winter is Coming. We were able to take that model and clean it up. We were able to create maps from that model, stitch 2 maps together, both in the diffuse maps and the normal maps. We were able to align the 2 maps together via UVs. Okay, just as so. And then we went through and we cleaned up the model to remove the hands and to remove the cloak. And then we exported that model into our new scene. We created a new scene. We appended that old model into this scene. We pulled it from that scene and brought it to this scene because it's much more cleaned up. We used the HHMs. We pulled a regular Neverwinter Nights 2 Jester's Nude model. I'll go ahead and place a link for that where you can get that. I'll actually make a blend file with that, just that nude model, and put it with this tutorial. And we put that model into the scene, and we used that to convert our mesh over to Neverwinter Nights 2 following the method that I used. This was a very long tutorial, but this is a very big one. This is something that people have asked me to make a few times, and I kept saying I'll do it, and I kept pushing it off just simply because I knew it was going to be a long tutorial, and I knew it was going to be something that you may not pick up right away. You may have to watch this a few times. You may have to download the video and go through it slowly, rewind, stop, play, rewind, figure it out, have some headaches, get mad, get upset, curse at me because I didn't explain it right. But eventually you will get it, I promise you. Once you get one, you'll get the next one just a little bit faster and a little bit faster, and pretty soon, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's going to take weeks, you could in days learn to do this quick, especially if you already have some knowledge of it and have some ideas of how to work Blender in the interface. You're gold. I'm telling you, you got this. Lastly, if you create stuff, share it. You know, and I'm saying this, you know, in legal matters, I guess I'm trying to say is, if you make some interesting stuff, put it on the vault. Let us see. I know there have been some issues with people just making stuff and just putting it on their PW, or people just making things and just not wanting to share. Neverwinter Nights 2 is a dying game. It's been dying. And those who want to say otherwise, whatever, that's your decision, that's your opinion. It's been dying. It only survives based off the love that people pour into it. And there's still a lot of people that pour a lot of love into it on the creators Discord, the DMs that take their time to do it, the devs that work so hard and all the stuff they do, just for people to play a free game, you know. Sharing is caring. It's what keeps it alive. Ain't no point in not sharing, because honestly, if you don't share, then people won't want to play, and what's the point of making crap for nobody to use? I get it, you want to learn and do this stuff yourself, but come on, share your stuff. Yeah, just share it. There's no point. And don't charge. Okay, I won't get into that talk, but I know there are some people out there that charge for stuff to be made, especially when it's stuff that's not theirs to begin with. It's very immoral. I don't feel it should be done. Don't charge for it, because you are jumping into a big legal thing that you should not be jumping into. That's just my word of precaution. Other than that, everybody happy creating, and I really, really hope that if I wasn't able to teach it all, you got more of an insight of how it works. And if you didn't feel like this is something you wanted to do to begin with and now you want to, great. If it's something you wanted to go through it again, go through. Go ahead and message me if you need me to expand on a certain topic, explain something a little bit better. I can maybe make a mini tutorial for it or something like that, okay? All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thank you for watching. Bye.